afternoon, everyone, and I welcome each and everyone who have joined the webinar. So we're going to start the webinar now, and we have around more than 220 people have already joined us for this webinar. So this webinar, we are doing this webinar in association with CGPI. So I would like to tell you, all of you, a bit about CGPI. CGPI has been incorporated to form a National Alliance of Advocates, CS, cost accountants, CS and GST practitioners focused exclusively on GST. Their vision is to organize the indirect tax community into one common body so that a unified body can stand up for the interest of the professional community as well as trade and industry with respect to GST. Through CGPI, they aim to wave a platform of leading knowledgeable GST professionals in each state, city and local area to bring all these leaders of the community on one platform. Through this community, we have been associated with Tushar Agarwal ji. He is one of the speakers today. CA Tushar Agarwal ji, along with CA Pitam Goyal ji. They're having more than 10 years of experience of LKS, and now they are the partners of Tattvam Advisors. So I would like to welcome both our speakers of today. Welcome Tushar ji, welcome Pitam ji.
Thank you so much.
So today's topic, as you all know, we have started this new initiation of a GST week, wherein every day starting from today till Saturday, we're going to talk about one aspect and practical aspects about it, practical examples, so that each and every one of us can be get more knowledgeable about the particular topic. For today, both Tushar ji and Pritam ji will be taking emerging issues in respect to input tax credit. I think so a lot of people must be having still a lot of questions when it comes to ITC, as it's very crucial when it comes to GST. So without me wasting much of time, I would like Tushar ji to start up the session with.
Thank you so much, Shubham ji. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Completely.
Okay, let us start.
Sure, sir.
Input tax credit is the fulcrum of GST law. The relevant sections and provisioning governing ITC are Section 16 of the GST Act, 17, Section 18, Section 20. Then we have definition clauses. Then we have Rule 36, 37, 42, 43, 86A at a broader level. These are the provisions which governs our input tax credit. So as per Section 16, a taxpayer is eligible to avail input tax credit of the tax paid on supplies of goods or services made to him which are used or intended to be used in the course or furtherance of business. So the most important part is, as a taxpayer, I am eligible to take input tax credit if the goods and services which I am procuring, they are used or intended to be used in the course or furtherance of business. In the course or furtherance of business are two different parts. Let me explain. When do you say it is in the course of business? So I am a chartered accountant. I got an assignment to do statutory audit of one of my clients, say in Maharashtra. I have to travel and I paid GST on the travel services which I obtained. So this GST, this traveling expenditure, it is in the course of my business. Now, what do you mean by in furtherance of business? Let us take an example. I'm a manufacturer. I intend to set up a new plant for which I hire a consultant who have to undertake a feasibility study. Consultant did their feasibility and provided me the report that this is not the right area to set up the plant. So I dropped the idea of setting up the plant. So will I get the credit of GST paid to those consultant, even though I'm not setting up the plant? Yes, because these services are in furtherance of business, intended to be used in furtherance of business. So this concept of in the course of furtherance of business is similar to the concept of claiming expenditure under the Income Tax Act, where in various judgments, the principle of commercial expediency have been adopted. The principle is very simple. It says that if an expenditure is commercially required to be incurred to facilitate the business, then the same shall be allowed as a deduction. At this juncture, I would like to highlight and discuss about one of my favorite case, Coca-Cola case. It's one of the landmark judgment in respect of Senvet credit. The facts were pretty simple. Coca-Cola was engaged in manufacture of concentrate. They used to supply this concentrate to the franchisees who used to manufacture and sell Coca-Cola. So I used to manufacture concentrate. This company Coca-Cola used to manufacture concentrate, supply to franchisees. Franchisees used to manufacture Coca-Cola and then sell in the market. Hindustan Coca-Cola obtained advertisement services in respect of the final product Coca-Cola, which was manufactured by franchisees, and they availed credit of the service tax paid on such advertisement services. Department denied the credit, contending that Coca-Cola, your output is concentrate and not the final product Coca-Cola, and you are availing advertisement services in relation to Coca-Cola, hence it is not in the course or in relation to your business. The SSC contended, the taxpayer contended that since I am supplying my output concentrate to my franchisees, if my franchisees sales augments and increases, they will buy more concentrate from me. So the fact that I'm undertaking advertisement of end product Coca-Cola will ultimately result in supplying more of concentrate by me to the franchisee. Hence, credit should be allowed, and the Honorable Bombay High Court accepted this contention. So the term in the course of furtherance of business is very wide, and it includes all expenditure which I am incurring as a part of my business. And this is much wider than what the words were used in Senvet credit regime. In Senvet credit regime, we may all recall that the words used were input services used in or relation to manufacture of final products. So the word was in or in relation to manufacture of final products. Here the words are in the course or furtherance of business. The term is very wide. Issue 1, whether I will get credit of gardening expenses, courier expenses, telephone expenses. Yes, obviously you will get that credit because that is definitely in the course of your business, no doubt about that. Second, issue number 2, will I get credit of the CSR expenditure which I am incurring? Whether it is in the relation to my business, income tax, there is a specific provision which denies credit. So whether that provision will debar credit in GST regime also. CSR expenditure to my mind is definitely in the course of business. Under section 135 of the Companies Act, it is an obligation cast upon the company to incur such expenditure. And since it's a legal obligation, therefore, to my mind, any expenditure incurred as CSR expenditure will be treated as in the course or furtherance of business. The fact that you have a specific deeming provision under Income Tax Act will not have any impact on availment of credit in GST regime. That's a deeming provision under the Income Tax Act. But please remember that the steps of availing credit does not finish just because any goods or services which you are procuring is in the course of furtherance of business. This is only first step that you should be eligible to avail credit under section 16. There are few more steps which we have to satisfy. Step number 2, this credit should not be barred under section 17.5. There is a negative list of input tax credit which are specifically barred. So if my credit is barred under 17.5, I will not get the credit even though it is in relation to my business. Second, if I'm using that particular goods and services which I am procured for providing an exempt supply, then also ultimately I will not be in a position to get the credit. Third, I have to satisfy miscellaneous conditions related to availment of credit, such as proper document, payment by the supplier, etc., which we will discuss later on. So, at a broader level, Section 16 allows all credit of all goods and services procured by a taxpayer which are used in the course of furtherance of business, subject to the conditions which they have to satisfy, subject to the fact that it should not be covered under negative list under 17.5, and it should not be used for providing output exempt supply. Issue number 3. Am I eligible to take credit of goods and services used in my residential colonies? So I have a big plant. I have a residential colonies for my workers. There I incur some routine maintenance expenditure, etc. Will I be in a position to take credit of the GST paid on such expenditure? Yes, residential colony is an integral part of your manufacturing plant, and it is no doubt these expenditure are in the course of furtherance of your business. These are for providing housing facility to my employees who are an integral part of my manufacturing process. So to my mind, any expenditure incurred in residential colonies, yes, you will get the credit subject to 17.5 restriction. However, you must note that certain companies recover rentals from their employees. So the residential accommodation which is provided in residential colonies, they recover rentals from their end employees. So renting of immovable property for residential purpose is exempt under GST. So when I recover this amount from my employee,
हेलो
residential rents,
हेलो
then it's a
मैं
supply
कह रहा हूँ कि
by
एक
the
बड़ी अपडेटेड
company to the
पीपीटी भेज दो ना यार, वो
employees.
पुरानी तुमने गलत भेज दी थी.
Then this recovery, if I recover residential rental for my employees, then it's a supply by the company to the employees, which is exempt under the GST law. Since it gets exempted under GST law, then the expenditure which you are incurring for maintenance of residential colonies, you will not get the credit because it is used for provisioning of an exempt supply. Now, let us take another example. Issue number 4. Will I get credit of utensils which I am using it in my canteen? Yes, these utensils again is expenditure in the course of your business. So you are definitely getting covered under Section 16 and hence credit. But what? If a company is recovering canteen charges from the employees, if company recovers canteen charges from the employees, the company has to charge GST at the rate of 5%. And there is a condition has to get notification that credit will not be eligible. So if a company recover amount from the employee, it has to charge 5%. And because of restriction under notification, your credit will not be eligible. So in short, the concept of goods and services which are used in the course of furtherance of business is very wide. The terms in the course of furtherance of business is very wide. Any business expenditure incurred during my business, I am eligible to take the credit. The Coca-Cola judgment gave a very wide interpretation, but I have to remember that this credit should not be blocked under 17.5, or it should not happen that I'm making some output supply wherein such goods and services are used and my output supply is exempt. Now, let us discuss some of the case related to the conditions which I have to satisfy under Section 16. One of the conditions to be satisfied under Section 16 is that I should have a valid document for availing the credit. Valid document means a proper tax invoice, a debit note, bill of entry, etc., as stated under Rule 36. Further, 36.2 provides that Rule 36.2 provides that these documents must contain all the particulars as prescribed under Chapter 6 of the GST rules. So practically, while doing GST audits and health checkup, we came across situations where this physical document was not carrying all the particulars as required under the rules. In such a situation, please remember, we have to ensure that these 5 particulars as per Rule 36 are at least mentioned in the invoice for availing the credit. If these particulars are not mentioned on the invoice, then department can always come and reject your credit. Then you have to litigate and argue that this is only a procedural lapse. And in Senate credit regime also, there were multiple judgments stating that a procedural lapse will not debar a taxpayer from a vested right called into tax credit. So there are numerous and many judgments available on this issue, but this will invite litigation. So please ensure these 5 particulars: description of goods and services, details of the amount of tax charge, total value of supply of goods, taxable value, GST of the supplier and recipient, and place of supply. In case of interstate supply are mentioned in the invoice. Very common issue which we face while advising to our clients and generally discussing with our colleagues. People are not having original invoice. They either have a photocopy of the invoice or they have something called computer generated invoice. This is a computer generated invoice. It does not require signature. Please note that signature of the on the invoice is one of the essential ingredient of the invoice. So the fact that it simply says that it's a computer generated invoice, this is not a valid invoice. There is no concept of computer generated invoice in GST regime. Either you should have a manual signature or you should have a digital signature or electronic signature. So there is a concept of digital signature and electronic signature, or it has to be a manual signature. Merely a photocopy of invoice and a invoice carrying a line that this is computer generated invoice is not a valid invoice. So as a practice, we should not adopt and process such invoices, and we should endeavor that my vendors supply me a proper document. Another issue which we came across while doing health checkup was in case of banks and airlines. Generally, what you do, you book your tickets through your agent. So you get an invoice from the agent. Invoice, even airline also issues the transportation invoices to the end customer. So if you book a ticket from your agent, so in fact, you will get 2 invoices. One is a travel agent will issue invoice for his commission, and the airline will issue invoice for the transportation charges. Generally, these invoices are reflected in 2A of the taxpayer. Whatever airline issues invoices, they are reflected in 2A of the taxpayer. But while doing audit, we found that physical copy of these airline invoices was not available with the taxpayer. Please note that the fact that you are getting an invoice in 2A will not satisfy all the conditions under 16. One of the conditions under section 16 is that you should also have a physical document. So in these situations, please coordinate with your travel agents and make sure that you have physical copies of all the airline invoices to avail the credit. Similarly with bank, so different banks have different practices. Few banks adopt statement as their GST invoice, whereas few banks raise separate invoices which are GST invoices. So you have to ensure that the physical document which you are having and the invoice which is coming in 2A, both document number should be same, the serial number should match. So it is very imperative that I must possess a proper document with me and at least ensure that Rule 36 particulars are complied with. Second condition for availing credit is that, and it's a very interesting condition, a taxpayer is required to make payment to the vendor within 180 days from the date of invoice. If he fails to do, then he has to reverse the credit along with interest thereon. And whenever he makes the payment, he can again claim back the credit. So it casts upon the taxpayer an onus to pay payment to the vendor within 180 days from the date of invoice. Let us take a case study. In my contractual terms, now because of COVID also, we all know cash flow will be a major issue for all of us. Now, let us take a case study. A taxpayer is engaged in supply of capital goods. He supplied capital goods to a customer and customer requested that since it's a capital intensive goods and the amount is huge, he requested to make payment in tranches. First payment after 3 months, second payment after 6 months, and third payment, full and final payment after 9 months. So in the initial contract itself, I agreed with my customer that I will make the payment in tranches. That is, first payment after 3 months, second payment after 6 months, third payment after 9 months. Now, since after 6 months, I have not made the entire payment. I have only paid 2 installments, and the third installment is yet to be paid, which will be paid after 9 months. So whether I am required to reverse the credit, here I would like to emphasize on the words where a recipient fails to pay to the supplier. So the words used are, please note, section 16 to start with the word where a recipient fails to pay to the supplier. The word used is fail. What do you mean by failure? Failure, to my mind, will occur when there is an obligation to pay something and you don't fulfill that obligation. There has to be an obligation on us to pay something. When in the initial contract itself, we have agreed that my payment terms are first installment after 3 months, second installment after 6 months, third installment after 9 months, then the fact that I'm not paying third installment after 6 months because it was due and it was supposed to be paid after 9 months, this is not a failure. So in this case, in my personal view, this will not lead to a failure. Payment of third installment where I agreed in the ab initio itself that I will pay after 9th month will not lead to failure of payment to my vendor, and section 16(2) will not be triggered. So this proposition is yet to be tested, but in my personal view, it's a good proposition and the arguments are good enough which may be sustained at higher forum. Similarly, retention money. The fact that I retain 10% and 15% of the money on account of performance incentive, section 62 provisions should not be triggered. Though at ground level, department is contending that in case of retention money, you have to reverse the credit to the extent of money retained by you because you are not taking payment within 180 days. In my view, if you follow following 2 steps, then it's a very good case to say that no reversal is required. First, in your accounting books, please knock off your vendor account completely and transfer this 10 or 15 rupees to a separate retention account. So your accounts book should not show that 15 rupees is yet to be paid to the vendor. Second, the contractual terms which I enter with my supplier, with my vendor. In that, my retention clause should specifically provides that this amount retained is not that I'm not making payment to the vendor. It is on account of performance obligation that this is kept on the instruction of supplier for performance guarantee. So if I satisfy these 2 conditions, to my mind, it will be a very good case to say that no reversal is required. Third condition, payment of tax by the supplier to the government. So that's a very important condition that my supplier should have paid tax to the government. How do I check that? You will say, sir, I will download 2A and reconcile my 2A with 3B. Please note that the fact that an invoice is coming in 2A is not a proof that he has paid the tax. He may have uploaded the invoice in GSTR 1. It is getting uploaded and auto-populated in GSTR 2A at your end, but he may not have paid the tax liability in 3B. It may so happen that he has filed GSTR 1 with tax liability of 1 crore rupees, uploaded all the invoices. While filing 3B, he just mentioned tax liability as 10,000 and paid tax to the extent of 10,000 and filed 3B. So there is no linking between 1 and 3B as of now. 3B can be filed independently. So this is just a food for thought for you that the fact that an invoice is coming in 2A is not a criteria and it does not satisfy the condition that supplier has paid the tax. And as of now, in fact, there is no way you can check that whether the supplier has paid the tax or not. Going forward, government is coming out with new returns where there will be a complete synergy between uploading on invoices and payment of taxes on supplier side. Now a practical issue which arises. Sir, I have availed credit in 3B, 1 crore rupees. In 2A, only invoices worth rupees 80 lakh rupees is coming. 20 lakh rupees invoices are not yet uploaded by the vendor. I am following up with the vendors. Now I am doing my GST audit. Should I mark an observation or should I tell my clients to reverse the credit of 20 lakh rupees? What to do? My tax buyers is following up with the vendors. He is trying that vendors upload the invoices for 20 lakhs, but as of now, they have not uploaded. What should I do? Should I reverse the credit? My take on this is that when we read section 16(2)(c), it says that ICC shall not be available unless subject to the provision of section 41 or 43A, the tax charged in respect of such supply has been actually paid. So this condition of payment of tax by the supplier is actually subject to section 41. In section 41, 42, 43A, we will file the complete return filing process. So 41, 42, we have the complete process of filing of GSTR 1, invoices getting auto-populated to GSTR 2, then acceptance rejection by recipient, then filing of GSTR 3 by the taxpayer. So there was a complete process of GSTR 1, 2, 3 interlinked process. And all this process has been kept in abeyance as of now. As of now, only GSTR 1 and 3B is functional, GSTR 2 and 3B is kept in abeyance. Since the provisions and mechanism under section 41 and 42 is kept in abeyance as of now, and condition of section 16(2)(c) is subject to section 41. In my view, it is a good case to say that no reversal is required as of now. The fact that I have availed credit, my vendor has not uploaded in 2A. As of now, no reversal required because section 2 cannot be said to be effective because section 41 is itself, mechanism under 41 is kept on hold. But ultimately, please ensure that you follow with your, ensure that vendor upload their invoices in GSTR 1. It is reflected in your 2A. Please ensure to follow this practice. We are aware that government is taking this very seriously. In fact, they have even implemented Rule 36(4), wherein they allow you credit only to the extent of 110% of the eligible credit, which is there in 2A. And both this 36(4) is kept in abeyance till August and will be implemented in September. We have to have a mechanism of proper follow-up with my vendors. But the fact that vendor has not uploaded the invoice, and then as of now, no reversal required. Follow-up only in a situation when there is a 100% surety that tax will not be paid by the vendor, then only reversal provision will trigger. Other conditions: receive goods and services. So I must receive the goods and services. What do you mean by receipt of services? An interpretational issue. There is no clear-cut mechanism of receipt of service. And general issue which is generally asked is, I avail an AMC services. Vendor raises invoice on 1st of January for 12 months. In my books of account, I take expenditure of 3 months and remaining 9th month is treated as prepaid expense. That's my accounting treatment. Am I eligible to take the credit of entire GST paid on this invoice or only to the extent of 3 months? My take on this is that from a supplier's perspective, it is a continuous supply of services. And in case of continuous supply of services, it is deemed to be provided based on payment milestone. In this example, since my payment milestone was on 1st of January, I raised the invoice also on 1st of January, then it is a service which is deemed to be provided. Even from an input tax credit perspective, this will be deemed to be received and I should be eligible to take the credit irrespective of the fact that in accounting, I am treating 9th month expenditure as prepaid expenditure. Next condition is that credit has to be availed within the time limit prescribed. And the time limit prescribed is due date of furnishing of my September month return. So when I talk about 1920 credit, I have to avail it before furnishing of due date of September month return. Please note that it is due date of return and not actual date. Many a times what has happened that September return tax period return taxpayer files say on 30th of October, 1st of November after due date. Then this condition will not get satisfied. The words used are due date, so I must adhere to this due date. So in a nutshell, I should have a valid document, I should receive goods and services, My supplier should have paid the tax. I should pay to my vendor within 180 days, and I should avail the credit within the time limit prescribed. Now, let us discuss some of the case studies relating to negative list of input tax credit. Section 17.5 contains details list of goods and services on which credit is specifically barred. One of the interesting case study, section 17.5c, it says that, and section 17.5d, it says that a taxpayer shall not be eligible to avail credit on GST paid on procurement of works contract services or goods or services which are used for construction of immovable property other than plant and machinery on his own account. So if I avail or procure any goods and service which I use for construction of immovable property other than plant and machinery for my own account, then the credit is barred. What do you mean by own account? On his own account means for his own use and not for furtherance of similar kind of supply. Let us take an example. I am a manufacturer and I want to build a plant and a factory. So for construction of factory, which I will use for my own purposes, I will require various kinds of goods and services. So I will incur civil expenditure, plant and machinery expenditure, civil work, buy DG set, HVAC system, fire extinguishers. I will buy furniture, movable equipment, electric wiring, etc. 17.5 bars credit only on goods and services which are used for construction of immovable property. What is not barred is plant and machinery. Second, movable items. So when I am getting my factory constructed, if I give civil work to a vendor, then credit on this civil work is barred. I can get credit on this civil work, cement, steel, etc. But on the HVAC which I procure, the fire extinguisher which I procure, the electrical items which I procure, these will qualify as my plant and machinery. Similarly, the movable furniture, projectors, lights, etc., which I procure, these will also qualify as my movable items on which credit is available. So I have to ensure that while giving contracts to my vendor, I give contracts on which credit is available as a separate contract to my vendor, for which I ask them to issue a separate invoice. So one contract of civil work I give to vendor one. Contract related to HVAC, fire extinguisher, etc. I give to vendor two. Contract related to furniture, etc. I give to vendor three. In such a situation, I will be able to take credit of whatever cost I am incurring on vendor 2 and vendor 3 because these are plant and machinery and movable items. What if I give the entire turnkey contract to vendor 1? I give the entire contract of construction, including civil work, plant, machinery, furniture, etc., entire complete turnkey contract to one single contractor. In such a situation, we have to see the nature of services provided by the contractor. If I give a turnkey contract to a contractor, and what contractor is doing is the construction of my entire factory. This construction of entire factory, and this the principal supply, composite supply is construction of my building. In such a situation, if I give the entire turnkey contract to one vendor, there are high chances that my entire credit is blocked. So it is advisable, in my view, whenever you construct your factory, your office premises, etc., please have separate vendors for your civil work, separate contracts for plant and machinery, separate contracts for your movable items. Prepare a BOQ. Please mark whether credit is eligible for this BOQ, yes or no. If credit is eligible, issue a separate purchase order and get a separate invoice. Very much relevant if I want to avail credit. The interpretation of the term plant and machinery is also wide, whether storage tanks, plant and machinery, whether cables and electric wires, plant and machinery. So these will be the dispute which we will see in GST regime, which will arise. But we should try to structure our transaction in such a manner that I get maximum of the credit under this provision. Another interesting issue, input tax buy one get one
Hello, Tushar sir.
Yes.
Sir, your voice is breaking for few seconds.
Am I audible now?
Yes, sir. You can repeat last page
Perfect.
PPT.
Perfect. So now we will discuss and section 17.5 Act. It says that input tax credit on goods which are lost, stolen, destroyed, written off, disposed of by way of gifts or free samples, it is not available. So what do you mean by disposed of by way of gifts? Gift means something which is voluntary, given to somebody without any consideration, without any advantage. We must have come across various schemes like buy one, get one free, buy three, get one free. Is it really free? Is it a gift? It's a settled jurisprudence in India as well as foreign law that bonus articles offered free by the manufacturers are not really free, but their prices is already disputed over the price of other goods, and supply of this free item is only a marketing gimmick. So when I say I'm supplying buy one get one, buy three get one free, these are not free items. It's the consideration is for entire four items, and hence reversal will not be triggered. But we have to keep in mind that it may amount to mixed supply where you are supplying two different items totally unrelated. Suppose you say that buy this fridge and get TV free. Buy one fridge, get TV free. Then the consideration which you are getting definitely is for TV as well as fridge. It's only a marketing gimmick. Credit will not be denied. But since it's a single consideration for two unrelated products, it amounts to mixed supply, and the rate which is the highest rate will be applicable on the entire consideration. This is what we have to keep in mind. How do I overcome this concept of mixed supply? And even I want to avail credit. One of the proposition and one of the mechanism which industry is adopting is that they are saying that if you purchase three items, then I will give you 90% discount on purchase of TV. If you adopt such a marketing strategy, then there you will be out from mixed supply concept, and you will also get the credit. Similarly, when we talk about CSR expenditure, though it is in relation to my business, but when I am distributing masks, ventilators as a part of my CSR obligation, is it a gift? In my view, gift is something which is voluntary. And when you distribute ventilator and mask as a part of your CSR obligation, which is cast upon under section 135 of the Companies Act, it is not a voluntary distribution, and hence, in my view, an argument is possible that it is not a gift and credit should be eligible. Similarly, when we have used the word destroyed, the destroyed here refers to fully destroyed situations. If my goods are partially destroyed and I'm able to sell those goods, then reversal will not be triggered. Only in the case when it's a complete destruction, I have to undertake reversal. Similarly, written off has to be read as complete write-off of the goods for the reason that I am not in a position to use the goods anymore. If I'm on account of impairment or index valuation, etc., that will not trigger my reversal. Another important and part regarding reversal of credit is goods or services used for personal consumption shall not be available. So what do you mean by goods and services used for personal consumption? Now, if I purchase sports and gym equipments for my employees, I incur hotel and airline expenditure for my employees, I purchase medicines for my employees. Is it a goods or expenditure which I incur for personal consumption? In my view, when I talk about a company, then nothing is a personal expenditure from a company's perspective. Whatever expenditure they are incurring on the employees in terms of providing them sports and gym equipments, medicines, etc., these will not fall under personal consumption because nothing is personal for the company. This is an expenditure which is incurred in the course of business, and hence it will not get covered under section 17.5J. What should be covered in this section is proprietorship cases. Like I am a proprietor, I have purchased a laptop, I'm using it for my personal purpose as well as official purpose. These cases will be covered, and company will never fall under this section in my view. Another important restriction under GST law is that input tax credit of food and beverages, life insurance, health insurance, etc., shall not be available except in a case when I'm using this for providing an outward supply of same category of goods and service or as an element of taxable composite supply. So let us take an example. I am engaged in providing training to my customers. I'm a trainer. I provide training to my customers. I take services of hotel. I rent a premises in hotel. They provide me audio visuals, rental of hall, food and beverage services. And then I conduct a training in that hotel for my clients. I charge seminar charges or training charges for my client. In this situation, the food and beverage expenditure which you have incurred, you have used this to provide a further supply of training services on which you are paying GST, and it's an element of taxable composite supply of training service, and hence you will get the credit. So if you are incurring expenditure of food, health, etc., and you are using it to provide further supply of similar nature of goods and services or as an element of taxable supply, composite or mixed supply, you will get the credit. Another important part, what if you are not using it for further providing a taxable supply? Say I'm just incurring I am organizing a sales event for my dealers. I call my dealers all over India, say to Delhi. I arrange a hotel, accommodation, food and beverage, etc. Will I get credit on the food and expenditure bill raised by the hotel on me? Hotel can raise invoices in two manner. First is they raise say rupees 1500 per plate for the function which I am organizing in the hotel, my dealer made. Second way is they raise a separate bill for renting of hall and separate bill for food and beverage, say 500 rupees. In the first case, if they raise a bill of 1500 rupees per plate without any bifurcation, to my mind, you will not get credit because it will come under the restriction of input tax credit of food and beverages. However, if they raise two separate bills, one rental of halls and second for food and beverage separately, then you will get the credit on rental of halls. Similarly, one important point we need to note is that life insurance and health insurance credit is also eligible if it is obligatory under some law to provide to my workers. For example, many cases. So for all my food and beverage, life insurance, health insurance, rent a cab, etc., if this is obligatory to provide under some law to my employees, then I will be eligible to take the credit. In Haryana, there is a specific provision that after 8 p.m. you have to provide cab facilities to the female employees. So if I'm providing that cab facilities to the female employees, then I should be eligible to take credit because it is obligatory for me to provide such services to my employees under the law. So in a nutshell, credit of food, beverages, outdoor catering, beauty treatment, renting of aircraft, etc., life insurance, not available. It is available only if you are providing it as a part of outward supply of same category, or it is obligatory for the employee to provide under some law to its employees. First, contract services for construction and immovable property other than plant machinery not available. But please make sure that whenever you undertake any such contract, give civil work to different vendor, give plant and machinery to different vendor, give procure movable goods from different vendors so as to avail the credit. In respect of good lost, stolen, destroyed, written off, disposed of by way of gift and free sample, please remember that your CSR activities will not come under this. Your marketing gimmicks like buy one, get one free, etc. will not come under this. Destroyed has to be read as completely destroyed, and written off has to be read as written off in a sense that you are not able to use the goods anymore. Now, before we move on to Rule 42 and 43, one important and very major concept under ITC. Please understand that our GST law is a state-wise concept, registration-wise concept. So whatever we are discussing, everything has to be seen at registration level. When I say that goods and services are used in the course of business, it is not at entity level, but at registration level. I will just give an illustration. I am having a head office at Gurgaon, and I have depots in various states. including Maharashtra. Now, one of my employee from head office travels to Maharashtra for some reason which is able to corporate functioning, and it has nothing to do with my eco business. I traveled on account of corporate reasons. I stayed there in a hotel. Hotel gave me a CGST, SGST invoice. Obviously, I cannot take credit in the state of Haryana, so I told my hotel to raise invoice in my Maharashtra registration number in the name of my depot. So hotel raised the invoice in the name of my depot in Maharashtra. Can I take credit in the state of Maharashtra? Please note that the fact that you have received the invoice in the name of Maharashtra does not mean that you are eligible to take the credit. It should also be used in the course of business of Maharashtra operations, that's depot operations. In my example, this traveling cost was incurred for official travel by the corporate team from Gurgaon for official reason. It had nothing to do with the Maharashtra operations. The expenses were also booked in my corporate office. So I will not be eligible to take the credit in Maharashtra. So it is very important to note that when I say that it is used in the course of business, I am eligible to take credit. In the course of business, please see registration wise and not entity wise. If you are getting an invoice, but you have not used the goods and services are used by the head office or some other branches, then you will not be in a position to take the credit. In such situation, the alternative would be A, to actually take an ISD registration, get yourself as registered as ISD and distribute this credit to the actual recipient who has utilized the goods and services, or tell your vendors directly to raise invoice on the recipient who has actually availed the goods and services. So with this, what we have discussed till now is that input tax credit is a concept wherein I am eligible to avail credit on all goods and services which are related to my business. I have to satisfy various conditions for availing the credit. First, eligible document. Second, goods and services should be received. Payment should be made to the vendor within 180 days. And it talks about failure to pay. Failure means there should be an obligation. Fourth, supplier should pay the tax payment to the government. As we discussed, even if supplier has not made the tax payment as of now, since Section 16 provisions will not get triggered because it is subject to Section 41 and Section 41 is kept in abeyance till now. There is a time limit for availing the credit. Then we had discussed that there is a negative list of credit. We didn't discuss each and every line item. We discussed some of the interesting cases. First is works contract cases and goods and services received for construction of immovable property. Please mind that definition of immovable property is very important. Definition of plant and machinery is very important. And structuring of contract is very important. How you structure your marketing gimmicks on 1+1, supplying free goods, supplying volume discounts by giving free quantity of goods, very important. And structure your transaction in such a manner that you get full credit. Also, your output does not qualify as a mixed supply. And so that is a mechanism my policy should be structured. Similarly, when I talk about taking credit on food and beverages, etc., when I'm organizing a sales event, etc., please ensure that bifurcate the invoice of food and beverages separately, take rental charges invoice separately, and credit on rental charges. And personal consumption will not include expenditure incurred on my employees, sports, gym equipments, hotel, airline expenditure. These are not personal expenditure. Credit will be available. Nothing is personal for the company's perspective, and personal consumption restriction is only applicable on proprietor. Now, over to you, Pitam, for taking up Rule 42 and 43.
Thanks, Tushar, for your valuable inputs. As discussed earlier, input tax credit can be bifurcated into 5 major heads. One is non-business. As Tushar explained, ITC is available only in respect of input goods services which have been used in the course and furtherance of the business. So the first point is the ITC to be bifurcated is non-business. Second is input used for making exempted supplies. Third, input ineligible under section 17(5). Fourth, inputs used for making taxable supplies. Fifth, inputs used for making taxable as well as exempted or non-business supplies. Now, as per section 17, where goods or services or both are used for making only taxable supplies, assessee is eligible for ITC for full amount. There will be no reversal requirements. Where goods or services or both are used for making taxable as well as exempt supplies, in that case, amount shall be restricted. The amount of credit shall be restricted up to an amount which is attributable for making taxable supplies. So input amount in relation to exempt supplies has to be reversed with. Third point, the when the goods or services or both have been used for making only exempted supplies, in that case, an assessee is not eligible for claiming ITC. It is important to note that section of input in respect of exempt supplies, whereas in service tax regimes it was specifically restricted through rule 6. Even if even in case of non even in case of non it has not been captured in rules section 17, it does not mean that the assessee will be able to claim the input in relation to supplies for making exempt supplies. In that case also we have to reverse the same. Now the question is, what is the exempt supplies for the purpose of reversal, and what is the whether the exempt supplies for the purpose of reversal is different from the exempt supplies definition? Yes. As per section 17, the value of exempt supplies for the purpose of calculation of reversal shall include supplies on which recipient is liable to pay tax under RCM, transactions in securities, sale of land. It is important to note that the transactions as mentioned in Schedule 3 of the GST Act shall not be included in the definition of exempt supplies and shall not be added as exempt supplies for the purpose of reversal. To illustrate the same, we will have case studies a little later. Now, as discussed earlier, input tax credit which was attributable for making taxable supplies as well as exempt supplies, or business or non-business supplies, have been specifically dealt with rule 42 and rule 43. Rule 42 deals with the reversal of credit in respect of input and input services. Rule 43 deals with reversal of credit on capital goods. It is important to note that Rule 42 and 43 are applicable only in respect of reversal of common credits. Inputs directly in relation to taxable, full credit available. Inputs directly in relation to exempt, no input available. So only in common inputs which are used for making taxable and exempt have to undergo the reversal under Rule 42 and 43. It is important to note that the reversal of CGST, SGST, IGST, and cess have to be calculated separately under both the rules. We cannot club these heads. Heads have to be separately, we have to calculate separately reversals under all the broader heads. Now, coming to Rule 42. Tushar, can you please forward the slides?
I'm forwarding it. So what, Pritam, I will do, I will stop the screen and you may share the screen.
So if you require, I can do that. Yes, sir. It is visible, sir. ITC reversal.
So Now coming back to Rule 42. Rule 42 broadly have two parts. One is the input to be reversed in relation to common credit attributable to exempt supplies. Second part is input to be reversed to common credit attributable to non-business purpose. Now, as discussed earlier, ITC we have bifurcated into 5 parts. One is non-business, second is exempted, third is section 17(5), which is ineligible, fourth is used for making taxable supplies, fifth is common, used for making taxable as well as exempt as well as non-business purpose. Now to illustrate it, suppose the assessee or a company have a total credit of 1 lakh rupees in a particular month. Out of 1 lakh rupees, 3,000 was in relation to non-business purpose, 7,000 was in relation to exempted purpose, and 5,000 was in relation to section 17(5), which is ineligible. So 1 lakh minus 3,000 minus exempted minus 17(5), 85,000 is the amount which I need to take as an credit in my electronic credit ledger. Now, assuming out of this 85,000, suppose 15,000 is an amount of ITC. This 15,000 is the amount which we need to map internally. We need to discuss with the management and we need to map the inputs, what all inputs are used in relation to making common supplies and what all inputs are used for making only taxable supplies. So assuming that 15,000 is the ITC attributable for making common, that is taxable as well as exempt supplies, 70,000 is the input attributable for making only taxable supplies. So Rule 42 would be applicable only in respect of 15,000. Now, the second fact to this case study, let's take that the total supplies made by a company in a particular month was 26,50,000, out of which 2 lakhs was exempt supplies, 2.5 lakhs was zero rated supplies, and 22 was taxable, normal taxable supplies. So total supplies was 2650. Now, what reversal we have to do? Reversal we have to do, there are 3 main parameters. First parameter is the common ITC, second is the exempt supplies, third is the total taxable supply. So exempt ITC, so common ITC is 15,000. 15,000 into 2 lakhs, which is forming the part of exempt supplies, divided by total turnover, that is 26,50,000. This is how we need to derive at the common ITC, which we need to reverse under Rule 42 each month. Now, this is the first part to it. Now, second part. Suppose this common ITC has been used for making non-business purpose also. Now, Rule 42 states, it clearly states that the common ITC in case of non-business purpose have to be reversed at a proportion of 5% of the total common ITC. That is 15,000 into 5%, 750 have to be reversed as a non-business purpose. It is important to note that ITC under the second part have to be reversed only in case the common ITC has been used for non-business purpose. In case the ITC has not been used for any non-business purpose, then there is no requirement of reversal of ad hoc amount of 5% of the common ITC. Now, we earlier discussed what is the value to be included in the exempt supply. So let's take some case studies to it. Everyone knows it. Interest, it is an exempt supplies as per definition. But whether we need to include the interest for the purpose of calculation? No. There has been a specific circular, and this has also been mentioned in Rule 42 that interest shall not form part of exempt supplies for the purpose of reversal, whereas interest forms part of exempt supplies and have to be reported under Form 9. Second case, dividend. Is dividend to be included under exempt supplies? To our opinions, dividend is never a supply. It is not a supply in itself. Hence, there need not be any question of including this under exempt supplies for the purpose of calculation. Third example, securities. What to be done in case a company is also doing sales and purchase in securities? So, as per rules, sales and purchase of securities are treated as an exempt supplies to an extent of 1% of the transaction value, and such value has to be added in the exempt supplies for the purpose of calculating reversal under Rule 42. It is important to note that this 1% is exempt supplies, and this also we have to show in 3B as well as Form 9. Now, sale of scripts. Sale of scripts is also categorized as an exempt supplies and have to be added in the exempt supplies for the purpose of calculation under this Rule 42. What about high C sale? High C sales has been covered under Schedule 3, and Schedule 3 has been specifically excluded for the purpose of calculation of exempt supplies under Section 17(3). Hence, high C sales, if any made by the company, has not to be included in the for the purpose of exempt supplies for the purpose of reversal. Now, it is important to note that Rule 42 has to be applied on monthly basis and also on yearly basis. In the month of March, at the end of the financial year also, companies have to go into Rule 42, reversal of rule under Rule 42 for whole year. So any shortage, in case of any shortage which have been reversed earlier, need to be reversed in March returns, and in case any excess which has been reversed, the company can reclaim the credit back. Now, it is most important to understand, as Tushar said earlier, for the purpose of availing input, it is the GSTN wise, not the company's wise. For the purpose of reversal also, reversal under Rule 42 has to be done on GSTN wise basis only, not division wise. For example, I have a registration in Haryana, and in Haryana I have 5 factories. One factory is providing both exempted as well as taxable supplies, whereas rest all 4 factories are making only exempt or the taxable supplies. Now, the first factory which was making taxable as well as the exempted supplies falls, there would be input goods and input services which have been used for making exempted as well as the taxable supplies. So this need to go under Rule 42 reversal. But how to calculate the total turnover as well as the exempt supplies? It is not for that particular factory that we need to apply Rule 42. It is the total number of factories in the particular GSTN for which we have to apply Rule 42, and the reversal has to be carried out. So this is whole for what we have to do reversal under Rule 42. Now we come to Rule 43. Later on, we will discuss the difference between both the rules even, and we will also have case studies in relation to these, which are actually practical case studies. Now, coming back to Rule 42. Rule 42 applies in case of capital goods. Now, broadly, capital goods can be used for 3 types of supplies. One, capital goods are used for making exclusively exempted supplies. Second, capital goods are used for making only taxable supplies. Third, capital goods are used for making both taxable and exempted supplies. So capital goods used for making exempted will not fall under this rule. Capital goods for making exclusively taxable supplies will not fall under this rule. Capital goods used for making taxable as well as exempted supplies will definitely need to fall under this rule. So as discussed, now let's take a case study. Suppose in the month of March, a company has purchased 3 machines. All 3 machines have an ITC of 60,000. One machine was used for making exempt, one machine was used for making taxable supplies, and one machine was used for making common supplies. So for purpose of exempt, the company will not be eligible for claiming input. So total input of 1,20,000 will be eligible and will be taken in electronic cash ledger in respect of machine used for making taxable supplies as well as machine used for making taxable as well as the exempt supplies. Now, as per Rule 43, the useful life of the capital assets has been taken as 5 years. So 5 years means 60 months. So reversal on capital goods need to be done for a period of 60 months. So 60,000 of the credit which was used for making taxable as well as exempt supplies need to undergo through this rule 43. 60,000 divided by 60, that is the 5 years. 1,000 is the amount which we need to reverse in the proportion of exempted and total turnover in the month of March. Suppose in the month of April also the company has purchased 3 machines, same parameters. So again, 1 machines they have purchased which has a ITC of 60,000 been used for making taxable as well as non-taxable supplies. So for the month of April, it is not 1,000 for pertaining to this month. It is the 1,000 pertaining to the month March period as well as 1,000 for pertaining April period. That is 2,000 which need to undergo reversal under rule 43. And this has to be done for a period of 60 months. Now, coming back to the recent changes, rule 43. In case there can be an instance that the machine capital goods was earlier used for making only exempted supplies. Now, the exempted supplies machine has been transferred for making taxable as well as the exempted supplies. So what we need to do? Suppose the company has purchased a machine in the month of March 2019 and till March 2020 they have used that machine only for the purpose of making exempted supplies. Now from April 2020 they are using that machine for the purpose of making exempted as well as taxable supplies. So as per rule 43, 5% is the value which they have given per quarter to each and every capital goods for which they have been used for. For example, in this case, 4 quarters, that is April 19 till March 20, this machine have been used for making supplies only for the purpose of exempted supplies. So rule 43 states that 5% into 4 quarters, 20% of the credit was in relation for making only exempted supplies. So total credit which you can claim is 60,000 minus 12,000, 48,000. So 48,000 is the amount which need to go for rule 43 reversal. So the important parameter here is earlier rule 43 states that 48,000 need to be divided by 5 years, that is 60,000, and have to be reversed only for a period of 48 months. So there was an inconsistency in the period of 60 and 48 months. But now this 60,000 this has to be divided. So now as per the latest amendments, the gross amount, not the net amount, that is 60,000 has to be reversed and has to be 60,000, that is the 1,000 has to be reversed for a remaining period of 48 months. So this removes the inconsistency. Now coming back, so we have understood what is there in rule 42 and 43. So coming back to the difference, rule 42 has to be applied yearly as well as monthly, whereas rule 43 has to be applied only on monthly basis. Interest under rule 43 need to be paid at a rate of 18% after the end of the financial year. For 1920, interest will start only after 1920, that is 1st of April 2020, in case the company has not done the reversal during 1920. Whereas the capital goods, rule 43(1)(h) clearly states that each and every reversal need to go into the interest testing. Now coming back to the case studies. For example, there is one real estate project, and the real estate project was commenced during service tax regime. Suppose in financial year 2016, they started it is basically a residential project, so they started procuring input goods, input services, and the capital goods for making the supplies under service tax regime. Now this project has not achieved commercial OC or the CC during the service tax regime. So this project has 2 legs. One, the project which was being completed during service tax regime. Second part is this project which is being completed during GST regime. Now, for the purpose of reversals, suppose in the financial year 1920, that particular project has received the completion certificate. So the question here is, at the time of completion certificate, what is the amount of credit which the company need to reverse? There are 3 components to it. One is the reversal of ITC charge or availed under GST. Second is the reversal of the Senvit credit availed under Service Tax Act. Third is the Senvit credit under Service Tax Act which we have availed, but we have use that ITC under transitional under section 142. So we have transferred that credit for service tax to the GST regime. So what are the implications for the same under the GST laws? So coming back to the same, first of all, GST law states that, to the best of our knowledge, and it is a very good case to argue that the reversal under the GST has to be done only in respect of ITC, which the company has received during the service during the GST regime only. Input received prior to GST regime need not undergo reversal under Rule 42 and 43 subsequently. Now, how we need to reverse for the purpose of carrying out a project when the project has achieved the completion certificate in case of a real estate project. It is important to note, for the real estate project, it is not through which we have to reverse the credit. It is based on the carpet area through which we have to reverse the credit. Second most important point, and for real estate projects, it is the project wise which we need to reverse the ITC, not the GST and wise. For projects, for the companies other than making projects under for the residential purpose real estate projects, it is the GST and wise under which we need to reverse the credit. Whereas in real estate projects, it is the project wise which under which we need to reverse the credit. Rule 42 and 43 have been inserted later, but these are applicable retrospectively from 1st July 2017. The reversal calculation under Rule 42 and 43 under real estate cases is not to be done on yearly or monthly basis. It has to be done in the year in which the company has received the completion certificate, and the interest also applicability would be applicable only after that. Now, the second case, let's take an example for the alcohol industry, the restaurant industry. So restaurant industries is supplying food and beverages also. Simultaneously, they have a liquor license, so they are also supplying alcohol. So can we say that the company, the restaurant is supplying the taxable supplies as well as the non-GST supplies, which has to undergo the reversal under Rule 42 or 43? Yes. For supplies in relation to alcohol, the company has to reverse the ITC claims which have been used for making supplies for alcohol and the other services, and need to undergo under implications under Rule 42 and 43 for the purpose of reversal. What is the value to be added for the purpose of alcohol? Whether excise duty and VAT need to be added? No. Only the base value of alcohol need to be added for the purpose of reversal, for the purpose of exempt supplies definition. Now, what are the input goods and services used in restaurant services? So, singer, bartender services, professional. In case it's not an employee, they have hired from some other vendors. So these are the services broadly which are used for making both taxable as well as non-taxable supplies and need to undergo the reversal requirements under Rule 42 and 43. Now, coming back to one more example, electricity consumption. For example, a company, there is an electricity company which have produced 1 lakh units of electricity, out of which 10 lakh units they have consumed themselves and 90 lakhs units they have sold. The 90 lakhs units which they have sold is for a value of rupees 100 crores, and 10 lakhs which they have consumed is for a value of rupees 1 crore. Suppose, so in the earthwise law, the earlier service tax laws, the reversal was need to be done on the basis of unit consumed, whereas in the GST law, it is on the basis of turnover, which we have understood earlier. So it is on the basis of turnover which we need to reverse the credit under Rule 42 and 43. Whereas for real estate, it is on the basis of project wise and the carpet area wise. Now, coming back to one more and the last important part of the ITC, that is Rule 86A. Most of us would be facing the issues under blocking of credits which has been made by the jurisdictional officers. So Rule 84 states that the commissioner or any person authorized by that commissioner, they can block the credit available in the electronic cash ledger of an taxpayer in the cases where the invoice has been issued by the non-existent person or person not conducting business. The taxpayer has taken credit without the receipts or goods or services. So there are fraudulent transactions which are taking place. For example, non-existent person or ITC taken without receipts or goods and services, or the person through whom we have availed the tax credits is found to be non-existent, or the person is not in possession of the tax invoice. So these all are the fraudulent cases. Now, it is important to note, and very, very important to note, that Rule 86(1)(b) states that the authority can also block the ITC in respect of the tax which has not been paid to the government. These are actually very harsh provisions, and the whole purpose of this rule was that the tax should not be available to the assessee in case the assessee is involved in the fraudulent case. Whereas because of this Rule 86(1)(b), even the jurisdictional officer can block the credits which have been availed by the assessee or the taxpayer in a bona fide case. This gives them the right to block the credits. This is basically, so this is what has been represented in the policy wing also, that the guidelines and the circulars need to be framed for this purpose. Now, the extent to which the ITC can be blocked by the officers are not very clear through this circular, through this Rule 86A. Also, currently, when the jurisdictional officer blocked the credit under Rule 86, there has been no notice issued to the taxpayer to respond to. So this is against the principles of natural justice, to which the taxpayer or the assessee can claim benefits. But as of today, these are very harsh provisions, and each and every assessee is being hit by the same. So this is the whole to which we conclude here. Now we can take the question answers, I think. Tushar, if you want to add anything to it.
Yes, I have seen various questions. So let us now take the questions of all the participants. The latest question is like restaurants are charging under 5% under composition scheme and no ITC. Yes, restaurants the rate of tax is 5% and no ITC was available. The case study which Petam explained was in respect of a hotel. In a hotel whose tariff is more than 7,500 rupees, and there is a restaurant. That restaurant has to charge 18%. That restaurant also supplies liquor. That liquor is exempt. So the issue always arises in case of hotel that no tax on liquor, but on room accommodation and restaurant I'm charging tax. So what all will constitute common services? So that's what we discussed. Otherwise, restaurant, standalone restaurant, 5%, no ITC. Another issue raised is, what about the credit on tempos? Please understand that under 17(5), the credit is blocked only in case of motor vehicles up to sitting capacity of 13 passenger, which is used for transportation of passenger of goods. In case of tempos, etc., which is used for transportation of goods, it is not blocked. Full credit is available. Full credit is available in terms of purchase of tempo, repair of tempo, insurance of tempo, trucks, etc., which are used for distribution of goods. Can ITC be availed if the place of supply of input service is Rajasthan and recipient is registered in Delhi? That's a very interesting issue. Under GST, there is no, like, for example, I am a taxpayer in Delhi. I have registration in Delhi. I receive a tax invoice from a vendor, say, who's in Maharashtra. He issues me an IGST invoice, but the place of supply is not in Delhi. So he's issuing me a IGST invoice on my Delhi registration, but the place of supply is, say, Gujarat, etc. Still, it's an IGST invoice, but place of supply is not Delhi. It is not the state of recipient. Am I eligible to take credit? Legally, in my view, there is no bar in taking credit. There is no condition under GST law which provides that the place of supply has to be the location of the recipient. However, when we see table number 8A in GSTR 9, if you see table number 8A in GSTR 9, that 8A, only those invoices data are auto-populated where the place of supply is in the state of recipient who is taking the credit. So government intention is very clear that this credit will be available only in case place of supply is in the recipient place of business. However, it is not coming from law. Is ITC available? Another issue is ITC available on CSR activities? As we discussed, it will depend upon the nature of CSR activity which you are undertaking. Any expenditure incurred as CSR, it is in relation to business. You just have to see whether you are not covered under 17(5) restriction. For example, you are doing a CSR activity by construction of hospital. Construction activities covered under 17(5). Credit will not be available. So we have to see 17(5) restrictions. Another issue, airline. Can we take credit on airline expenditure, transportation of airline, as aircraft is coming under 17(5)? We see under 17(5), credit is barred on purchase of aircraft or hiring of aircraft which you are using for your conveyance purpose or transportation purpose. However, in case of transportation of passenger services is different from purchasing of aircraft or renting of aircraft. So there are three transactions: purchase of aircraft, hiring of aircraft, and transportation of passenger services by airlines like Indigo, Air India. So there is no bar on credit on transportation of transportation services provided by airlines like Indigo, Air India. Bar is only on the services of sale of purchase of aircraft or hiring of aircraft. If we forgot to take IGST of 1718 in case of import, what to do now? See, please understand that restriction of time limit is applicable only in case of an invoice raised by a supplier in India under forward charge mechanism. That time limit restriction of taking the credit by September month return is not applicable, A, in case of import of goods and services, B, in case of reverse charge mechanism. Can company take IGST on custom duty or other expenses in ITC is not available on BCD part. You cannot take ITC on BCD. One of the question is, what if the goods are destroyed and sold as scrap? Am I eligible to reverse the credit? Very good question. 17(5) says no credit will be available in case goods are lost, stolen, destroyed, written off, etc. So what do you mean by destroyed? So there can be two cases. First, when it is partially destroyed, and like for example, I have a machine was destroyed because of any reason, and I sell it as a second-hand machine only, as a destroyed machine using the same HSN. It's still in a condition to get repaired and can be used as a machine after repairing, then no reversal is required. But a case where a machine is completely destroyed, machine falling under chapter 84, 85, completely destroyed, and then I sell it as scrap, steel scrap under chapter 72, etc. To my mind, that situation reversal will trigger when it is completely destroyed and sold as scrap. However, if you are selling it as second-hand machinery or in a state where it can be repaired, then no reversal will be required. Can we take insurance input on bus purchase? We do traveling business, etc. So see, now post the changes in GST 17(5) list, credit on buses is allowed. So if you are purchasing a bus for your transportation of employees, etc., then credit on purchase, etc., is allowed, including health insurance, including insurance taken for purchase, repair in relation to buses, etc. Credit is allowed. Credit is barred only in case that vehicle has a seating capacity up to 13 passenger. If it is more than 13 passenger, credit allowed. Input destroyed in manufacturing process, any reversal required? So it depends upon when the goods are getting destroyed. If it is destroyed as a part of the manufacturing process itself, then no reversal is required. However, if your final goods are kept at godown and then it gets destroyed for some reason, reversal has to be undertaken. Or if you have a raw material at your godown, or some reversal has to be done. and reversal has to be done if there is a restriction. But as a part of manufacturing process, no reversal required. Neetam, you want to take few questions?
Yeah, there are one question which was there asked by few of the participants, that whether we can pay the RCM as of today in relation to financial year 17-18 and we can claim the input. The answer to this lies in section 16 only. The section 16 is the debarring thing is that in case of an invoice or a debit note issued by the supplier, the restriction till September applies only in case of an invoice or the debit note issued by the supplier. In case of an RCM, the invoice is been issued by the taxpayer themselves. So section 16 time limit does not apply to the RCM cases. We can pay the RCM as of today in respect of financial year 18-19, and we can claim the input today itself in our 3B.
Another question is whether I can take ITC of the lift I purchase. Yes, ITC of the lift is available. Lift is a plant and machinery, hence ITC will be available. I constructed a mall and gave it on rent and charging rental income at 18%. Whether credit available. See, we discussed that in case of construction of a mall on rent, there is a Odisha High Court judgment which says that full credit will be available because constructing a building on and then giving it out rent amounts to own use. And the same has been challenged and is pending in Supreme Court as of now. In my humble submission, there are high chances that this Odisha High Court judgment in the case of safari retreats may get overruled and 17(5) provisions have to be complied, because when I construct a building and give it on rent, and it is for my own use only. So in such a situation, all the civil work which you have done for construction of building, no credit available in respect of civil work, credit available in respect of plant and machinery expenditure, and credit is available in respect of movable items which you have procured. I am into can you throw some light on solar power, credit availability in solar power business 70-30 scenario? So so let everyone understand this 70-30 concept. A works contractor who's engaged in setting up a solar power plant is actually undertaking a works contract, because that entire solar power plant amounts to immobile property. Now, government has come out with a specific valuation rules which says that 70% will be deemed to be the value of the goods involved in it, which you will charge 5% GST, and remaining 30% will be the value of services on which you will charge 18%. So in solar sector, there was a big dispute in terms of what output tax has to be charged, what is the nature of my output tax, works contract, or is it sale of movable goods only. So government has said that 70% will be deemed to be goods and 30% will be deemed to be the value of services on which 18% is chargeable. So you in this case is acting as a contractor. So when you are acting as a contractor and providing further works contract service, then whatever expenditure you are incurring, you will get full credit. Please understand this restriction of works contract is applicable only if you are an end user, when you are constructing the building for your own use. When you are acting as a works contractor, then whatever expenditure you are incurring on your purchases, full credit will be available. Now, capital goods are availed in credit of capital goods are availed in pre-GST regime, and now I am selling them as scrap or disposing of, etc. Whether credit reversal required? Under GST, the provisions of credit reversals are contained under Rule 42-43, Regulation Section 17(5), the situations in which I have to reverse the credit. So it only talks about input tax credit. And input tax credit is defined under Section 263. It says input tax credit means credit of input tax. And input tax is also defined under Section 262, which says that input tax means that GST charged by the supplier on supply of goods and services to the taxpayer. So entire input tax credit is only a GST concept. So if I have purchased a capital goods in pre-GST regime, I have paid excise duty on that. I have taken credit on that. Now I am disposing that capital goods in GST regime. No reversal of credit which I have earlier taken in GST regime will be required. On my sale of capital goods as of now, I have to pay the GST on my scrap sale value, second-hand sale value. What about GST on director services as per AR ruling? We discussed that other day. In my view, that ruling is incorrect. we should not rely much upon that ruling. In a nutshell, if your director is working in the capacity of employee, there is a master-servant relationship which should be substantiated by way of documents, and you are paying salary to him on which you are getting TDS under 192. No reverse charge will be applicable. Reverse charge will be applicable only in case of non-employees director on which to whom which you are paying commission, sitting fee, etc. on which you deduct TDS under 194J. ITC on water testing charges by the company. I need more facts. Otherwise, for any testing charges, ITC will be available. We need more facts to determine whether ITC is available or not. Another question. There is an advance ruling which says that ITC on promotional schemes not available. I am aware that we are getting multiple times of advance rulings. Please note that advance ruling was a concept which was thought to be a dispute resolution mechanism, but now it has become a host of interpretational issues. Don't rely much upon advance ruling. Please read the law. If we are falling within the ambit of law, I can take credit. If not, I will not be eligible to take credit. So I have to see the provision of section 17.5 and accordingly determine. Let's not get colored much about with the credit ARs, because you have thousands of ARs giving different reasons and their reasons are also not well explained. So let's not pay too much value to such ARs. Though few exceptional ARs are there where you have good reasonings, but not all.
Hello.
Is ITC available on barter business which payment is not made within 180 days? See, what do you mean by barter? Barter is like I am providing you a service and in turn you are providing me a service. So it's a barter. So in barter itself, when I have sold you goods and in turn you have sold me certain goods, you have exchanged certain goods to me, the conditions get satisfied at that moment of time when there is an exchange of goods. So that exchange has to be within uh, one. Strictly speaking, the word uses payment. So this will not include barter. In barter, at the time of barter itself, you get conditions get satisfied. I need more exact facts from you, like what is the kind of barter which you are talking about. I'm in April month, I'm giving you a TV. In return, you are giving me, say, fridge.